Alright, let's go. Number 10. This moon is actively leaking its ocean into space. For years, Europa was considered a completely sealed, frozen world, dead, silent, and locked beneath kilometers of impenetrable ice with absolutely nothing escaping to the outside universe. Scientists assumed whatever lay beneath that crust was permanently trapped, unreachable, forever hidden. That picture is wrong. Observations from the Hubble Space Telescope revealed something that genuinely shocked the scientific community. Europa is actively releasing massive plumes of water vapor through deep fractures in its icy surface, towering geysers erupting from a hidden ocean and launching material directly into the vacuum of space. These are not minor cracks seeping a little moisture. These are eruptions powerful enough to propel ocean material hundreds of kilometers above the surface, where it drifts freely into the surrounding darkness. That single discovery rewrites the entire playbook for finding life. Instead of engineering a lander capable of drilling through miles of frozen rock to reach the ocean, a spacecraft can simply fly directly through these plumes and chemically analyze everything that comes out. Salts, organic molecules, and potential biological signatures, all accessible from orbit, no drilling required. But those plumes are just the surface reaction to something far more extreme happening above the ice, which is exactly where number 9 comes in. Number 9. The radiation that should kill life might actually be feeding it. Europa does not exist in peaceful, quiet space. It orbits deep inside Jupiter's colossal magnetosphere, one of the most violently hostile radiation environments in the entire solar system. Jupiter's magnetic field traps high-energy charged particles and accelerates them to extreme velocities, creating belts of intense radiation that constantly bombard Europa's surface every single second of every single day. The doses are so concentrated and so severe that any exposed organic material would be chemically destroyed almost instantly. No organism as we understand it could survive on the surface. But here is where science takes a remarkable turn. Rather than simply obliterating everything it touches, this relentless radiation is simultaneously building something entirely new. When high-energy particles slam into the icy surface, they shatter water molecules and carbon dioxide apart at the atomic level, forcing the fragments to recombine into entirely different, highly reactive compounds. The result is a surface layer rich in hydrogen peroxide, sulfates, and oxygen-based oxidants, precisely the kind of chemicals that living organisms can use as fuel. In the chemistry of life, these compounds represent enormous stored biological energy. If these surface-generated oxidants can be transported downward through the ice and into the ocean below, they could act as a continuous power supply, beating complex ecosystems in total darkness, without a single ray of sunlight ever being involved. On Europa, the very force that makes the surface uninhabitable may be the exact mechanism that keeps the ocean alive. But for any of that chemical fuel to matter at all, it has to physically reach the water, which brings us to number 8. Number 8. The ice shell is a planetary-scale conveyor belt. From a distance, Europa's surface appears completely frozen and motionless, a still white sphere hanging silently in the dark. But examined up close, the reality is something far more chaotic and far more interesting. The entire outer crust is violently fractured into what planetary scientists call chaos terrain, vast regions where enormous slabs of ice have been shattered, rotated, shifted, and forced downward in a process of constant geological upheaval. This is not random surface damage from ancient asteroid impacts. This is an ongoing active process happening right now. Recent research using computer models based on a geological process called crustal delamination suggests that chunks of the nutrient-rich, radiation-charged surface ice regularly break away from the shell and physically sink down into the warmer ocean below, carrying their chemical payload with them like a slow-frozen freight system. The same tidal forces that heat the moon's interior also drive this constant churning of the surface. Material goes in at the top, gets chemically charged by radiation, then gets physically delivered downward into the ocean. It is a planetary-scale conveyor belt operating in total silence, completely invisible from the outside. This solves one of the most stubborn problems in astrobiology, how energy and nutrients from the outside universe actually reach a deeply buried biosphere. But what is causing these dramatic, precise fracture patterns across the ice in the first place? Number 7. The surface is covered in fractures that should not exist. Look closely at Europa's surface, and you will find something immediately strange. It is covered in long, sweeping, curved fractures that stretch for thousands of miles across the icy shell in repeating arc patterns. Scientists call these formations cycloids, and their existence is deeply puzzling. Random impacts from asteroids and comets create random, irregular cracks, jagged lines radiating from a point of impact with no larger geometric pattern. That is not what we see on Europa. These fractures are deliberate, consistent, and curved in precisely the way you would mathematically predict if the entire surface were flexing and bending in response to something fluid beneath it. The only coherent physical explanation is a vast liquid ocean sitting just below the crust. As Europa orbits Jupiter, the planet's tidal forces stretch and compress the moon, and the ocean below allows the rigid outer shell to flex dramatically in response, creating those sweeping, curved fracture lines as the ice moves and cracks under the strain. This is not a guess or a model assumption. The fractures are there. The math that explains them requires a liquid ocean. You are not looking at a solid frozen world. You are looking at a thin shell of ice bending over a hidden abyss that is enormous enough to flex an entire planetary crust. And the evidence of that abyss does not stop at the physical. It is also magnetic. Number 6. An invisible force confirmed a global hidden ocean. When NASA's Galileo spacecraft flew past Europa in the late 1990s, its magnetometer detected something unexpected. As Europa moved through Jupiter's powerful magnetic field, the moon was generating its own secondary induced magnetic response, a return signal bouncing back from inside the moon. That kind of induced signal is physically impossible if Europa were made entirely of solid, non-conductive rock and ice all the way through. The team analyzed the specific frequency, strength, and behavior of that magnetic response. It matched only one explanation: a large body of electrically conductive liquid moving beneath the surface, not a core of liquid metal and not pockets of partially melted ice. The signature was a perfect match for a global ocean of salt water, salty enough to conduct electricity, large enough to interact with a planet-sized magnetic field, and completely hidden beneath kilometers of solid ice. Scientists detected an entire ocean, the size of a planet, without ever seeing a single drop of water. They found it by listening to how the moon talked back to an invisible force. That ocean is not a hypothesis. It is an observational fact, and its scale is something that takes a moment to fully absorb. Number 5. This ocean is bigger than every ocean on Earth combined. When we talk about Europa's ocean, we need to stop thinking in the scale of Earth's seas. This is not a collection of underground lakes or disconnected reservoirs of water scattered beneath the ice. This is a single, continuous, unbroken global ocean that wraps entirely around the interior of the moon, covering every square kilometer of the rocky seafloor beneath the shell. Current gravitational models and magnetic data estimate that Europa's subsurface ocean holds more than twice the total volume of liquid water found in all of Earth's oceans combined. Every sea, every ocean, every drop of salt water on our planet, multiplied by 2 and then sealed under ice. The depth compounds it further. Scientists calculate this ocean could plunge up to 100 kilometers in certain regions. The absolute deepest point on Earth, the Mariana Trench, reaches barely 11 kilometers at its lowest. Europa's ocean descends nearly 10 times deeper into crushing, lightless pressure that our deepest submarines could not survive. Picture that. A dark, global ocean twice the size of Earth's, 10 times deeper than our deepest trench, completely sealed from the universe beneath a frozen ceiling. That body of water has been sitting there in the dark for an almost incomprehensible amount of time. Number 4. That ocean has had 4 billion years to develop life. In biology, time is arguably the single most important variable. Given the right ingredients and enough uninterrupted time, chemistry has a tendency to organize itself into increasingly complex systems. That is, at its most fundamental level, what life is. On Earth, once stable liquid water appeared and the chemistry was right. Life emerged relatively quickly, and then spent billions of years growing more complex, more diverse, and more resilient. Europa's ocean is estimated to be roughly 4 billion years old. That is approximately the same age as life itself on Earth. For 4 billion years, this ocean has sat in stable liquid form, protected from asteroid bombardment by a thick ice ceiling, shielded from solar radiation, supplied with chemical energy from below and from above, in direct contact with a mineral-rich, rocky seafloor. Every single condition that astrobiologists list as necessary for life to emerge has been continuously present on Europa for the same duration of time that produced every organism that has ever lived on our planet. The numbers are not just encouraging, they are difficult to argue against. Number 3. Europa stays warm without any help from the sun. Here's a question that seems to have no good answer at first. Europa orbits more than 480 million miles from the sun. At that distance, solar energy is so faint it is nearly negligible. Surface temperatures on the ice drop to around minus 260 degrees Fahrenheit too, cold enough to freeze the crust harder than granite. So how does a liquid ocean, larger than all of Earth's combined, remain unfrozen in those conditions? The answer is a phenomenon called tidal heating, driven by a precise gravitational arrangement that Europa is locked into. Europa orbits Jupiter in what scientists call the Laplace resonance, a 124 orbital ratio shared with its neighboring moons, Io and Ganymede. This resonance continuously forces Europa's orbit to remain slightly elliptical instead of perfectly circular. Because the orbit is elliptical, Europa's distance from Jupiter changes slightly as it travels around. That changing distance means Jupiter's gravity pulls on Europa with slightly different force at different points in its orbit, stretching and compressing the moon's interior in a continuous cycle, like squeezing and releasing a rubber ball over and over, billions of times. That mechanical friction generates heat deep inside Europa's rocky core, enough heat to keep a global ocean liquid for billions of years, powered entirely by gravity, with no sunlight required at all. Number 2. The exact conditions that created life on Earth likely exist there. Right now, for most of human history, the assumption was simple. Life needs sunlight. Remove the sun, and life is impossible. Then in 1977, submersibles exploring the deep Pacific seafloor found hydrothermal vents, cracks in the ocean floor where superheated, mineral-rich water erupts from the crust. Clustered around those vents in total darkness, miles below the reach of any sunlight, were thriving ecosystems. Tube worms, crabs, fish, and dense communities of microbes, all of them powered entirely by chemosynthesis, drawing energy from the chemical reactions between the hot bent fluid and the surrounding seawater. No photosynthesis, no sunlight, just chemistry, heat, and life in abundance. Europa's ocean floor sits in direct contact with a heated, rocky seafloor driven by the same tidal forces that keep the ocean liquid. The conditions for hydrothermal venting, hot rock, liquid water, dissolved minerals, chemical gradients, are almost certainly present at the bottom of Europa's ocean right now. The same geological engines that may have produced the very first life on Earth 4 billion years ago could be running at this exact moment in an ocean 480 million miles away. On a moon most people could not find on a map. Number 1. We already launched the mission to find it. And it's working. For decades, every discovery in this list existed as theory, inference, and mathematical modeling. Powerful evidence certainly, but no direct measurement. No spacecraft designed specifically to answer the question. That era ended on October 14, 2024. NASA launched the Europa Clipper from Kennedy Space Center aboard a SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket, the largest interplanetary spacecraft ever built. It carries 9 science instruments operating simultaneously on every pass, ice-penetrating radar, mass spectrometers designed to analyze plume chemistry, thermal imagers, magnetometers, and ultraviolet sensors. It is not just traveling to Europa, it is already doing science. During its planned flyby of Mars on March 4, 2025, Europa Clipper tested its Raisin radar instrument, a test that was impossible to perform on Earth due to the instrument's design. The spacecraft collected 60 gigabytes of radar data from the Martian surface, and the results were an unqualified success. The instrument performed exactly as designed, penetrating the surface and returning clean, detailed data. Scientists declared it ready for Europa. The spacecraft arrives at Jupiter in April 2030 and will conduct 49 close flybys of Europa. Every pass, every instrument, every plume it flies through, all of it feeding directly into the question of whether that ocean is alive. We are not waiting and wondering anymore. The probe is built, it is tested, it is in space right now, heading toward the answer. Europa is no longer a distant frozen moon that scientists speculate about. It is a confirmed ocean world with its own internal heat source. A global saltwater ocean older than complex life on Earth, active geological systems delivering chemical energy into that ocean, and surface conditions nearly identical to the environments on our own planet where life thrives in total darkness. The case for life on Europa is not built on wishful thinking. It is built on magnetic data, fracture geometry, thermal modeling, and direct chemical evidence. And it gets stronger with every new mission and every new study. The question stopped being, could life exist there a long time ago? The question now is simply whether it does. And in April 2030, we will have the instruments, the data, and the answer.